What is going on, guys and gals? Lately on the channel I have done nothing but tractor stuff. So I figured now that it is snow on the ground and cold outside, I'd get back to doing some shop stuff. My progress in the shop hasn't stopped at all since my LS versus Hemi video. That was several years ago now. Done a bunch of hot rods lately, mostly LS swaps, including what I'm going to get into today, which is this Ford 9-inch build. So a friend of ours I guess this probably started almost 2 years ago now, had a 2000 S10. It was a 4-cylinder, 5-speed manual, extended cab, just your typical two-wheel drive S10, and wanted to LS swap it. And we got chatting one day over lunch, and he's like, wow, you can really do this. And I was like, yep, not a problem. You know, we can make everything legal because in New York State we have to pass an OBD2 inspection, right? So, you know, I kind of walked him through the process of all of that. And so anyways, we got the ball rolling on it. And we built a iron 6-liter. We had rec port heads on it. They were off a Pontiac G8, so an L76 or L77, I don't remember. And they had bent all 8 intake valves because the single bolt, the dowel for the single bolt cam on Gen 4 motors had sheared. And so all 8 intake valves had touched. So we got a pretty good deal on the heads. We bought all 8 new intake valves for them. Got the heads rebuilt. Block went out to machine shop. Everything gone through, and I built the motor beginning of the last winter. So then this spring, truck came here, got the motor pulled out, and we got the 6-liter put in it. Still wanted to keep it a stick, so I had originally, back in late 2017, early 2018, I had a 70 Dodge Dart Swinger that I was going to LS swap because the 318 on that didn't like revving to 7 grand one day, and it actually broke part of the upper ringland off, cylinder 7, and I really wasn't in love with the whole Mopar stuff anyways, so I was going to LS swap it. Well, looking for a cheap manual to put in it, and everybody wants more than new prices, it seems, for a used T56 that needs synchronizers and bearings and everything else that a 60,000 plus mile used T56 needs. And so I started looking at alternative options, and one of them that we found was the Nissan FS5R30A. So that was available in a few different vehicles, Pathfinders, and mainly the 300ZX. So I believe, because I'm not a huge Nissan guy, but I believe like starting in 87 or 88, you could actually get them in the earlier generation 300ZXs. But if you're going to do the swap, the one you're really looking for are from a 90 to 96 300ZX, which is your typical 300ZX that, you know, the Lamborghini Diablo stole its headlights from, right? So I bought a 300ZX for like $400 that was running and had been gone over with a ton of Bondo from someone, and they had made this custom hatch, all this different stuff with. Pretty much a friend of mine wanted the car, had a bunch of rare JDM stuff on it, so he went with me. I bought the car, took the transmission, clutch, pressure plate, flywheel, starter, the slave solenoid, everything I needed from the 300ZX, and he kept everything else. And so anyways, transmission sat under that bench for a couple years, and then I finally had somebody that wanted the thing, so he bought it for me. He bought the G-Force adapters kit that I had purchased for it, and then at that point we had purchased a South Bend clutch that was pretty aggressive for a 300ZX, but you gotta remember, it's now designed to hold 400 plus foot-pounds of torque versus mid-200s that a 300ZX was, right? For anyone that doesn't really know a lot about the transmissions, they pretty much share the same internals with like an R32 Nissan Skyline GTR. but there's no transfer case because there's no all-wheel drive. So, I mean, they're pretty bulletproof transmissions. I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen a video of a 800 horse Skyline doing an all-wheel drive burnout. As awesome as that is, it takes a lot of force, a lot of pressure on stuff, you know. So, you know, just for rear-wheel drive and an NA 6-liter that we're going to spin to 7,000 RPM seemed like a perfect option. So anyways, we got the truck done. It's inspected, driving, but we can't do a lot with it because it still has the 7.625-inch 10-bolt rear end. And it's probably its saving grace right now is that it's an open diff because the right rear tire light's on fire at like quarter throttle and third gear. If it had a limited slip in it, it probably would have died by now. We've probably only put 150 miles on the truck. Clutch is now just broken in. I've just started to do some wide open tuning with it. Not even got too far in depth with it. But the next big issue is the rear end. So I'm going to walk through building a 9-inch. This is probably going to be more hardcore than some of your typical 9-inch builds. And the reason I say that is because our friend Jeff, old dirt car guy, and anyone that knows stuff about circle track, dirt car stuff, the 9-inch was a big popular option before all the quick change stuff came into play like 15, 20 years ago, right? So back when you could go to a junkyard and actually buy a 9-inch, and they were in, you know, plentiful vehicles, which they're definitely not anymore. So anyways, we're using a used third member. This is the third member that he had kicking around. This one currently has a spool in it with 456 gears, which is not going to be a good option to drive on the street at all. What we are doing is we're going to reuse the center section since this is one of the more expensive parts of the entire 9-inch build. So I'm going to go through gutting this. We have brand new ring and pinion. This is 355 gears, or 350 gears, I think. Thinking about my F-150 here in the background. I think, if I remember right, they're 350 gears. We did a lot of playing around with the like Tremec gear calculator app and playing with tire size and you know, gear ratios and cruising RPM and stuff to try to figure out what we wanted. And we pretty much concluded that 350 should get us 1900 RPM or so cruising down the road. We could go a little deeper than that, but then, you know, your gear ratios start getting really far apart. So fortunately, being a 9-inch, it's easy enough to change it later down the road if we decide to go lower. But I think this is going to be a good medium between fun, you know, like fun low gear, but still decent fuel economy, streetable, you know. It's going to be a good compromise. So we're using a Detroit True Track. Or sorry, I take that back. The True Track is a helical gear. That is a Detroit locker. Again, one of the more aggressive limited slips for the street, but it's what a lot of the NASCAR guys actually use. And then why I say this is going to be pretty hardcore is this is a 35 spline axle, and it's full floating. So anyone that's not familiar with any of the dirt car, race car stuff, these are 5/8 spline or 5/8 inch studs with a full floating hub. So this will actually accept GM metric disc or metric calipers for the rear discs. So we've got parking brake on them, and we've got our rotor that is going to bolt to the hub. We've got our caliper brackets that'll have to be welded to the axle once everything's assembled. We have all the hardware here that we need to assemble the full floating hub, including these sweet pink hubcaps. They're going to go in the center of the flange here. Here, that. So how this full floater works is your bearing assembly here actually supports the weight of the vehicle. Okay, anyone that's familiar with a full floating rear axle out of like a 1-ton truck, which this 85 Nissan is not a 1-ton truck. However, that is a Sterling 10.5 from a Super Duty in there. And how it works is the bearing assembly on the outside will support 100% of the weight of the vehicle. And then the axle, all the axle does is twist it to get it to turn. Now, in contrast, the 9 3/4 that's in the back of my F-150 here, a semi-float axle, how these work is your axle goes through the bearing and the axle shaft supports the weight of the vehicle as well as the twisting force of you actually driving down the road, right? So this is inherently a little bit of a weaker design because you end up with the axle shaft trying to do 2 jobs at once, kind of, versus just the only applying the torque in a full floater. So again, a little bit more of a hardcore design for especially a street S10, but circle track guys is what they're used to, and so this is what we're going to run on the street. So I know that we are 11 minutes into this now, and what should have been a rather short intro, but I just wanted to give kind of an update of where we're at with shop projects. I don't have time to start this axle build today. I just wanted to go over everything in this first part. Christmas is right around the corner, so sometime in the next couple days I want to get over here and start assembling this rear end. So I'll walk everybody through that. Once the axle is assembled, we have the bare housing here. I'm not going to paint this. We're not going to do anything with this. We're going to assemble the entire thing, and then we'll get the truck back over here before the snow sets in too much. We're going to rip the leaf springs out of the rear in the factory rear end, and we're going to build a 4-link setup. Coilovers. The front of it has the full Ride Tech coilover kit with the tubular A arms and everything. Main reasoning for that was that the stock stamped control arms in the front have a lot of extra mass around the bushing area. They stick out 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch more past the bushing, which is unnecessary. And I didn't want to go cutting stock stamped control arms that are notoriously weak to begin with. So we put tubular A-arms with Delrin bushings and everything else on the front for mostly header clearance. So once that started to snowball, then we decided we might as well do the rear end to match. So when the truck gets over here for that next part, I'll walk through how we're going to set up the 4-link. We're going to try to play with some anti-squat calculators, try to get that figured out. We're not really looking to build a huge race car here or anything, but if we're going to do this, we might as well make sure that it at least tries to hook up with the 235 or 245 BFG radial TA tires that are on it, which are probably the worst tire known to man, regardless of how cool they look. I'm sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings, but my 200 horse 318 and my Dart would spin them like they were not a problem. So they're not a very good tire if it comes to traction, and that's what's on this truck. So if we can get those to hook up, we're gonna be doing something good. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you if you want to see more, see the rest of the update on the truck and the more progress, and I'm going to try to start filming more shop videos. I'm a little more caught up here on some of the stuff, so I should have a little bit more time now to actually film stuff. I give the big YouTube car guys credit because filming stuff is a pain in the ass, and it kind of impedes on some of the work you're trying to do sometimes. So it can definitely be a little distracting too. So I'm going to get into the swing of filming stuff when we're out here doing stuff in the shop. And if you guys want to see that stuff, click that subscribe button so it comes up in your feed. Click the bell. That'll give you a notification anytime we post a new video. And make sure to like it and share it to some of your friends, especially if anyone's looking at building a 9-inch for their S10. And when my brother gets around, we'll give you a tour of the Nissan 720 with a turbo LS and 1-tons and a 4L80 and everything else you can think of. So thanks for tuning in again, guys, and we will chat at you later.